Okay, so my question for you is how did your school make money outside of their yearly budget?
So we were always doing fundraisers. I don't think that there was a single month that we weren't sent home with like a little packet of like Yankee Candle or the Girl Scouts or just like something that was, yes, sending money to somebody else, but also like a fundraiser for our school to do a thing. And then also like school dances. We had like a father daughter dance.
Oh, that's so cool. I don't know if I ever remember um
School name.
doing a school dance. I might have for the older kids like when I was younger, but when I was like in 8th, 5th grade, um they didn't do that for us. So for when it comes to like fundraisers, we did do like a lot of those catalogs. We would do like you would sell chocolate bars. Basically the options there were you either pay the $50 to get out of it or you sell the candy. Like you were getting the school money either way. Um and we would also I guess this doesn't necessarily um tie into school, but because we were a Catholic school, like church donations as well, they'd come around with the baskets during like mass ceremonies and that sort of thing.
Did you guys have like mandatory mass during the week?
Yeah, so Fridays would be our day. Like so, every Friday we would have mass. During the winter, we would usually keep it inside at our school. Um, so I think I might have mentioned this before. I don't remember, but instead of like having a designated room, we just kind of had like one big room. We had one big room that was like our multi-purpose room. So that was where we would do morning prayer. That's where we would do lunch, and that's where we'd hold mass on Fridays during the winter. And then during like the spring, and closer to summer, we would walk to mass on Fridays to our local church. And it was like this big thing. Everybody would get out of class and walk to mass, have the ceremony for an hour, and then walk back to school.
Did you notice any like contempt for Friday mass from kids who like went to church on Sundays?
All contempt, like in the sense that they didn't want to
Would
go like more than
yeah,
once a week.
like a preference to the point, maybe not even a preference, but just like the thought that, oh, I go to church on Sundays, why do I have to go now again on Fridays?
Right. I think it definitely depended. I think for a lot of kids it was just a way to get out of class. Um because those days like how whatever that span of time was, those classes were canceled. So I think for a lot of kids it was something to look forward to just because it gave them a chance to get out of their academic curriculum like outside of recess and like those sort of breaks. Um, I don't know for like kids who did regularly go on Sundays. I don't know exactly how they felt about it. I'm sure there was probably they probably weren't the most excited that it was becoming two times a week sort of thing, but
I know that my sister, she goes to the Catholic school that's in
Town.
her biggest complaint is that not that they do mass during the week, but that they do it on Monday. So she'll
oh
go Sunday morning and then they'll go and do it Monday morning.
oh that's interesting that it's like back to back like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I guess for us it was nice to have like that 1 day gap in between if you were a family that went regularly.
Did you guys go regularly?
My family, so when I was younger, um we we tried to practice more. I can't say in my experience that it was something that I looked forward to. I have memories of me hiding under my bed before going. Just cause it wasn't something that I mean when you're so young you're not really able to grasp all the concepts, and it's just sitting and singing for an hour and a half. I tried to I think it was middle school I started going again with my um grandmother, not so much for the not so much like that I was trying to like strengthen my religion, but just more as like a social bonding experience with her. Um but outside of like, I think we probably stopped going around like first or second grade for me.
So, how did your school incorporate different kinds of families into the school community? I know that being a Catholic school adds just that general, most of you are Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And with Catholic ideology, there's quite a few people cut out from the family pool.
Right. So I think a good example of that would be we would do like the Harvest Bazaar, which is basically like it was like handmade crafts and that sort of thing that they would hold around like early to mid November, sometimes early October. But that was open. They would hold that in the parish center, and that would be open to families of any sort who just wanted to go there to shop for the holidays. Sometimes they do like bake sales. One thing that they did that was really cool that they don't do anymore was that they had like it was like musical chairs, but whoever won would get a cake, and it was only like a couple dollars to play, and they don't do that anymore. And me and my
Musical
sister,
chairs are dangerous.
yes, they are. People get way too into it. Um, so yeah, maybe not the best for the competitive type, but for for your more calm musical chair players, it might be a better fit. And then for so have you looked into your school since becoming an adult, since aging out? What about the school itself has changed and what has stayed the same for you?
So last year, I actually worked at my elementary school. I was a paraprofessional. So a big change was when I was in school, they were K through 5, and now they're pre K through third. They closed the school, and
Newtown.
so it condensed everybody. So that's a really big change. And all of the bigger like spaces are still the same spaces. Like the gym is still the gym, the auditorium is still the auditorium, cafeteria, etc. They kept a lot of the murals from when we were little, which was really nice. It was fun to see. Um, honestly, there aren't huge changes, even with like staffing. It's very similar to what it was when I was younger. They took out a lot of the programs, but they also implemented new programs, and a lot of them are just online versions of what we were doing.
Mhm.
What about
And
you?
so for me, I think looking back at it, I think probably the biggest change, like especially looking at my last year,
School.
which was my eighth grade. So when my eighth grade year, we were still in the midst of COVID, kind of starting to phase out a little bit, but it was still very much a prevalent thing. So my eighth grade year, we were in person, but we were in masks, and we had like the plexiglass dividers around um, our desks. Something else that we did was we would do mask breaks in between classes, which were like 10-15 minutes just out in the parking lot. Um, which was it was more of like out of like a social gathering type of thing. And sometimes we would go play like outdoor activities. Like so we had a basketball hoop in a parking lot that some of the students would utilize during that time. So that would probably be the biggest change, looking just to see how we've kind of phased out all those precautions that came with COVID. And the school itself, I don't believe has changed too much. Um, staffing, though, I know has changed quite a bit. Like I know, especially my years, my early years there, with they had a hard time keeping certain teachers. It was either the teachers had been there for forever, or any new teachers that got in, they couldn't stay because they were uh their their wages were so low, it just could not afford to stay there, regardless if they liked teaching there, they liked the community. So that's what made it really difficult, was not having like consistent teachers for music, Spanish, those sort of subjects.
It's hard with private schools because they don't have the same stipulations regarding wages and things like that and what they have to do with their money,
Right.
especially with Catholic or religious schools, which are getting then funded by the same people that are funding for like church upkeep. But
Right.
hmm,
Right. And then
I miss mask breaks. I think that they should bring back mask breaks. High schoolers need breaks.
I agree. I think there needs to be some sort of break, especially, well, and this is what changed. They started implementing this my senior year of high school. Was they had the yonder bag, and which has become like such a, you know what, and phone, as long as phones are going to be in the building, they're going to be an issue. There's going to be kids who abuse those rights, but to punish everybody for it when it's such a select and small issue. I,
However, it begs the question, is it a punishment when phones shouldn't be utilized in the school classroom space anyway?
true.
It's
Yeah.
not, I think the worry with the yonder pouches is less so, at least since they've been around for a couple years. In the beginning, everybody was like, what the hell is this? Why are you doing this? This is stupid. What did we do? Whatever. But at
Right.
this point, it's mainly just remained a safety concern for parents. But also, to the same extent, if my child were in a scenario where they were in like a school shooting type situation, I wouldn't want them on their phone. I
Mhm.
wouldn't want their bright ass screen lighting them up for anyone to see.
Right, in a dark room.
Right, like I understand both sides of it because yes, you would want them to be able to reach out to you, but do you want them to reach out to you?
Right. Yeah, and especially in a situation like that where their safety is compromised. I think my biggest concern that came with it, when they first started coming through with it, was my transportation and my work schedule. And another concern that a lot of people brought up was, if you have medical issues like you're a diabetic and you check your insulin through your phone. But later on, a lot of those kids were able to explain their situation and they were allowed those privileges, or not even privilege, just those rights, to be able to monitor their glucose. But for me, my biggest issue was, like if I was getting called into work, I didn't really have a way to contact them outside of school. And then like transportation, like I had like at the time, I would take my sister to school, and sometimes plans would change, and sometimes I needed to know what was going on. And I feel like just being able to shoot a quick text is so much easier than going to the office and taking more time out of your learning experience to do that. But I do understand. I do think there's a lot of good behind the push for it. But there's just so many other little things that go into it that kind of take away the good from what they're trying to do.
And I think with those little things, it's the fact that school is not addressing the fact that teenagers are given adult responsibilities
Mhm.
outside of their school hours that they need to be able to access during those school hours.
Right. Right. Yeah. Um, and then do you remember the switch from the computer lab to Chromebook carts in the classroom?
Yes and no. Because in the fifth grade, that was when we got Chromebooks implemented into our like daily life. But computer class was still a thing at the same time. Computer class was to teach us how to use computers. It transferred to that and how to do other things like MS Paint or things like that. And the Chromebooks turned into what we used to learn for like Lexia and things like that. And then I transferred out of fifth grade into middle school to a charter school, and everyone had an individual Chromebook. So it was kind of like, a halfway jump and then completely pushed in to the opposite end of it.
Right. I feel like the same pretty much goes for me. Like we were still having computer lab when I was in fifth grade, but we were still using Chromebooks to work on IXL, like those sort of assignments on those sort of programs as well. Um, but yeah, I do kind of miss computer lab though, and I think it's important to be able to navigate that old. I mean, now that technology is outdated, maybe not so much for the time that we were using it, but I think it's important for students to be able to navigate older technology like that, especially going into the workforce where that they might need to know how to use those things.
I think that teachers need Chromebook training. Maybe not when they first came out in the classrooms, like when we were younger, but now these kids are like turning on accessibility, like eye tracking accessibility settings and like freaking everything out, and nobody knows how to fix it because
Mhm.
they don't know how they did it and nobody knows what's happening. I think that everyone needs a little more training on computers if we're going to shove kids on computers all day.
Right.
But speaking of that, do you think that elementary school has been changed for the better or for worse with just overpassing time and like changes in legislation, but also like the technological boom?
I think so. In terms of the technological boom, I feel like it's just I don't want to say ruined like the experience of like be like the child like the experience of being in childhood, but the I think these kids are grasping on to so many concepts that they're way too young to be getting into, and then they're bringing that into school and they're bringing those ideas um to these other kids at school. And I don't think that's okay. I mean, I think that there does need to be some sort of monitoring in outside and in school as well. And I think that's something you especially don't see enough in school also.
Not enough monitoring
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
of
my
what
school
they're saying or what they're on because we got our Chromebooks bricked. We could not even get on YouTube.
really, yeah,
Yeah,
our schools were not like that.
they blocked everything.
See, our schools were a lot more lax when it came to that. Like we were allowed to access YouTube. People and even like when to go back to the topic of the honor bags, like a lot of it ended up becoming an issue where kids couldn't even bring their own personal computers in because they were using that to access like Snapchat and Instagram, but then people found out a way to do that on the Chromebooks as well. Um, so I think that can come become an issue, like distracted learning, being distracted from learning and that sort of thing.
I think that Yonder Pouches did kind of exactly the opposite of what they intended to do because they intended to make kids less focused on their phones, but now they're just focused on getting it the hell out of that pouch
Right.
and destroying that pouch in a way that they can get it open, but also shut it in the morning to show their teachers.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
spending a lot more time breaking those Yonder pouches than they are on their homework.
Oh yeah, I knew quite a few people who did break theirs. But then you have to pay for it. So it's like what's the
Not
purpose?
if you break it right.
Oh my God.
If you bend it, the pin will hold until you go to break it open and then it just pops right out.
Oh,
But another big worry was with the fact that the things open with magnets.
true. So you could just buy it and open it yourself, which
Not
defeats
only that, that's not good for your phone.
no. No, not at all.
Do you think that the tech boom killed the book fair? Because
Ooh,
I have not seen these kids at a singular scholastic book fair. I don't think they do them anymore, and if they do, none of them are excited for these big pointers and erasers.
yeah.
The
I
teachers
think
don't use pointers anymore. That's why.
I know. Bring back the pointers first of all.
Right?
And second of all, I think I I agree with that like full-heartedly. And I think especially with apps like TikTok that have made it so kids don't have the same attention spans that they might have had like compared to 10 years ago. They're they're not going to be interested in reading chapter long books when they can just watch TikTok that's 30 seconds, and that that can give them that same like dopamine fix, I guess. Or
Right.
yeah,
And I mean, there's Kindles and ebooks, so why would they buy a physical one?
true.
But again, that was another way that the schools made a lot of money.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, this one's just a one off, but did you actually ever make anything with rainbow looms?
Yes, I had the rainbow loom kit, like the
Like the plastic like piece?
yeah, like the plastic like braiding board thing. I never knew how to use it later on. Um, but I was always like and people would make the keychains out of it, which were like the lizards and stuff with the beads. Oh my God, I was like I just remember that being so cool. But yeah, I did.
I could never figure it out. Though my hand-eye coordination is garbage, so that probably has quite a bit to do with it. Um, if there was anything that you could change about your schooling experience, what would it be?
Ooh, okay. So for in my experience, where Sacred Heart really lacked was there any sort of program for students of special needs. And the reason that this actually makes me um like even remembering this now still kind of makes me upset. We had a kid in our class named David. He was on the spectrum, and these teachers did not know how to help him. Or they didn't know how to accommodate him at all. And instead of trying to talk out these situations with him and you know treat him with kindness, they were aggressive towards him. Like you could tell that this, I mean, he was like a super smart kid. Um, and I think a part of his way that he focused was utilizing his Chromebook. Um, and they would take that away from him, saying that he was distracted and all these sorts of things. And it's just like you know for another kid you might call that distracted, you might say that they're doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, but for him that might just be his regular way of learning. And I mean, I also like personally have sort of a similar experience. So growing up, I was diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age. And I was I was a super hyper super energetic kid, and they just did not know how to handle me. um and I wish that there was there was some sort of program or somebody at that time to tell me like it's okay to not learn like everybody else. Everybody's gonna have their strong suits and their limitations, but to kind of be like shunned from the group for something that's so common now, you know it's just I would that's the one thing I would definitely change about my schooling experience, was to see some sort of program being put in place.
And I think that that was a big thing with like our age and why people are questioning this huge boom in kids diagnosed with ADHD and autism was that it was kind of beat out of us.
Hmm.
You weren't allowed to misbehave or you were punished. There were consequences for your actions. And I feel like at this point in time, we've moved to kind of an opposite. The pendulum has swung to the opposite end, and there's no consequences for anything, regardless of neurotypicality or neurodivergence. No kids are getting punished for any sort of behavior. But when we were young, any sort of behavior that was out of what was expected of you was punishable, and you had to stay inside from recess, or you had to write lines, or you had to do something that would then cause something in your brain to tell you, I can't do this, I need to just do what I'm supposed to, which kind of just beat the neurodivergent features out of every kid. And then when they stopped doing that, before they kind of switched to not punishing anybody for anything, we noticed that huge boom in kids with ADHD and autism because they were showing the signs of it because they weren't like fearful.
Right.
And that just also comes in with training. It's expensive to train people with for things like that, but it's also expensive to not. You're losing out on students because of these behaviors because they're being sent to different schools that are better equipped for them. So you're losing out on the money for the body. It's hard because when we were younger, most of the disabilities that were recognized, you got services if you had a physical disability or if you were so mentally disabled that it bordered on a physical disability.
Right. Right. I yeah, I like we didn't even have I don't even remember kids ever having like paras or anything now, and that was like such a it was such a different thing to see like especially transferring into public middle school, public high school, to see these kids being taken care of properly like I hadn't seen before. It was such an interesting um jump.
And it's an interesting jump to see, especially even between our schools, because you went to a private Catholic school, while you didn't really have those services for anybody, we did still have those services. And to the extent that if a parent was very pushy about their child needing those services, they would become available to them.
Right.
But it's just so unfortunate how hard parents have to fight, or to the opposite extent, how hard they or how little they will try, and how much the school has to fight to put them into these services when parents say that they don't need them and that everything is fine. And that all popped up with TikTok and whatever the hell unschooling is.
Yeah. Yep.
Homeschooling needs heavy regulations. And if you are an actual fan of homeschooling, you should be pro regulations on homeschooling.
Exactly. Like you can't put a kid in a situation where there's no curriculum, no rules,
No
no
one has a
boundaries.
degree.
Right.
And
And then
that's
set
fine because there are preschool teachers and teachers in general that don't have any sort of actual degree, but they have a curriculum given to them. And a lot of the time, those types of teachers are given relatively strict lesson plans because they
right.
don't have the training.
And like we need to be like most importantly, these kids need to be learning some sort of structure. Like without like everything that any sort of institution is built off of is structure. Like any job that you go into, any college you go into, there's gonna be different rules and stipulations to everything, and we need to have these kids to be able to adapt. And without teaching them that adaptability, they're gonna fail.
And that's another problem with what they're doing now, with that nobody's getting punished or having any consequences for their actions, is that nobody is held accountable for anything because they don't think they have to be. There
Right.
isn't an actual, nobody's told what behavior is wrong because you can't say no. You can't say something's wrong. You just have to say it's not a good choice.
Hmm.
I think that sometimes kids need to not have a choice and they need to just do what they're told because they're kids. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. And you can't give a kid free range and expect it to turn out okay. I mean, bottom line is once again, these kids need structure. That's like and then they're gonna get into a situation that that's like so unfamiliar to them and they're not gonna know how to handle it.
There was a comedy special. Oh my gosh. It was probably 2011. So this has been a conversation for a long time about kids not being held accountable or like yelled at, or not even yelled at because no, that's not a good thing to do to a child. It just scares them. But or being like reprimanded is
Mhm.
that they're going to go up to their, or it was about participation trophies and the fact that everyone gets rewarded for just participating. It's the fact that someone someday is going to tell someone that they did a bad job, and that they aren't doing good and that what they're producing isn't what they want, and they're gonna jump out a fucking window. They're
No, you're
just,
right.
they won't be able to take it.
Right.
Because they can't. None of these kids can take consequences. None of them can take criticism. It's a personal attack, and you hate them.
No,
No,
I mean seriously. Seriously.
it's so hard. And then they turn into adults, and then it's worse. Because
Right.
how do you teach them at that point?
Yeah, it's kind of that you can't teach old dog new tricks mentality. Like you've got to be able to teach them young if you want them to actually be able to grasp that concept.
Not only that, because by the time they're adults, they think that they've done it right the whole time. That's what everyone has said to them their whole life. It must be true.
Exactly. Exactly.
No
Well,
one's willing to change. Elementary school is only going down the shitter. End of podcast.
yeah, and that's where we're gonna call it wraps.
That's where we're gonna call it wraps.